From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I am your host, Patrick Berry. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios talking about personal home safety, specifically fire safety. We all have one of these. It's a cell phone or a tablet or now e-bikes, e-scooters, whatever they may be, but they all contain batteries that can be dangerous, but they can be very safe if you know what you're doing and talking about. Across the desk from me today is Captain Zac Ellison from the Ludlow Fire Department. He's with the fire prevention portion of the fire department. Captain, thank you so very much for joining me. I appreciate your time. So yeah, we all have cell phones, tablets, and they're all powered by a type of battery that can cause problems. So from a fire department standpoint, how hard is it to extinguish a lithium battery fire?
Lithium-ion batteries present more of a challenge when we're looking
than your
at
standard D cell,
of course,
AAA.
You know, while a lot of batteries in the past have presented their own unique hazards, right? The extinguishment of a fire caused by a lithium-ion battery is very difficult. Water, right? Lithium is a water-reactive metal.
What does that mean?
So, because of its properties, basically it reacts with water. It actually will make something burn hotter, brighter. Not to say that
it's like putting water on an oil fire.
Yeah,
it's just not going to work.
Similar to how you may use, or how someone would accidentally use water with a grease fire with cooking. It's going to spread the grease out. Water directly on a water reactive metal such as lithium or magnesium in a vehicle's engine block is actually going to make it burn brighter, hotter. Now, that's not to say that copious amounts of water like that we would show up with when we deliver out a fire wouldn't eventually extinguish it, but we're looking at extinguishing the material ignited by the battery, by the lithium.
Right. So if I've got my cell phone, charging at my house and it ignites, a magazine nearby because it's overheated.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, is extinguishing what has happened around that fire, not necessarily the battery itself.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That presents its own unique challenges, as anyone can go on the internet and you can look up some videos of lithium-ion battery fires and you can watch the ineffectiveness of traditional firefighting efforts with them, and it really just takes off.
So what do you do instead of water? I mean, everybody thinks if you got a pumper truck coming down the street to your home or whatever, is it a foam? Is it a blanket?
So it's not so much. There are a couple different techniques out there that are available to different fire departments. The fire department in New York explores a lot of options because they see a lot of these, and many other departments are coming up with some of this new technology as it comes out. As it's available to us. It's not so much a foam and necessarily creating that blanket. We want to keep the things around the battery safe. That's why, given our response time and everything else, or where the battery is located within the home, outside of the home, in the garage, etc., it really becomes a timing thing. So extinguishing them becomes a big problem, and the average homeowner is not going to be able to extinguish these fires. That's why we stress some prevention before the fire, like assuming or...
So it sounds like a lot like if you're using a radiant heater in your home in addition to your home's or apartment's natural heat. Just be smart about it. Don't have blankets hanging over it. Don't put it near a curtain.
Correct. And there's some steps you can take with lithium-ion batteries while charging them, while not in use, to kind of prevent those things. And that's where this is really important, is before the problem arises, the prevention aspect of it. And we have some great tips, for that.
Okay, so we'll come back to the prevention side of it. But when it comes to lithium-ion batteries burning, so you and fire departments around the country, around the globe, are really have to change how you fight fires, because these batteries are now everywhere.
Yeah, they are. And a lot of times, given the size of the battery, how many cells actually make up the battery pack, whether it's a tablet or something getting larger up to a scooter, something
Okay.
like that.
Right.
That presents more of a challenge. And as one of these damaged batteries or these damaged cells inside of the battery, as they tend to have an issue, they can obviously cause a reaction with the other cells. So the size of the battery creates a bigger problem. And the bigger problem isn't necessarily just in the cells that may have gone off at that particular time. So it presents a hazard to us, as even if the fire had extinguished itself, the cell had burned itself out, there's no telling when the other cells in that battery pack, if you will, may have a reaction. So for us, it's a matter of packing those things up if they haven't,
So does it become a hazmat situation?
It can become a hazmat situation,
Okay.
absolutely. The gases that are given off by burning lithium-ion batteries are very dangerous. They're highly flammable and they're very toxic.
The gases are flammable.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's actually what will help the lithium-ion battery burn, in addition to its properties in lithium.
Right.
The components and
It
everything
gives off
within.
the gases, then it just sort of feeds on itself.
Correct. Yeah. Hydrogen gas being one of them that's extremely flammable, can be toxic, but very, very volatile. So the byproducts of what's happening, and similar to the byproducts of more modern drapery, plastics, etc., and they burn hotter, quicker, blah, blah, blah. We're looking at the same thing with lithium-ion batteries. We really are.
Interesting. So what are the things people need to be concerned about? Is it with their batteries? Because they're everywhere. You know, I mean, is there like the way you store it, the way you keep it, the way you charge it, all of the above?
It's always all the above.
Okay.
Yeah, those are some good points. Storage of them, especially we see a lot of problems in the fire service with our personal mobility devices, our scooters, the e-bikes, things like that. Typically, for whatever reason, weather permitting, etc., there's not an ideal situation, or certainly trying to protect your property from theft, what have you. There's not always an ideal situation for some folks to keep that mobility device outside or in a safe area, so it comes into the home.
Right.
And it's easier to work on. It's a comfortable environment. If there is a problem, it's easier to charge. But, unfortunately, bringing those into the home runs that risk. And one thing that we stress, and not to cut into the prevention too quick, but finding these mobility devices stored, whether they be charging or just stored, in an area of egress, meaning in a hallway to an exit door, that's life-changing for a lot of folks.
We're up on our first commercial break. We are taking a quick break. We're talking with Captain Zac Ellison from the Ludlow Fire Department about lithium-ion battery safety. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. Across the desk for me today is Ludlow Fire Captain Zac Ellison. Thank you so very much for joining me. We're talking about the hazards of lithium-ion battery fires in our homes. Captain Ellison, what are some of the things that we should do to prevent a fire? We teased this a little bit earlier. What are some of the basic steps we can take as homeowners with our phones, our e-scooters, or whatever it might be, e-bikes?
With anything that uses batteries, but in particular, like we're talking about lithium-ion battery, there are just some general safety tips that I think maybe get overlooked. And as a matter of convenience, I'm sure, but things that we could all work on to keep ourselves safer. We have to look at where we're charging some of these devices, right? They do run longer. That's the advantage with lithium-ion, but when they do need a charge, we want them charged quicker. So it may be more convenient to have that device, whether it's a phone or tablet or even our mobility devices such as scooters, they're charging somewhere where they shouldn't be, maybe around furnishings that are flammable, other things. Perfect example, too, leaving your tablet or your phone on your bed or on the couch next to you, you know what I mean? Maybe not as safe as on the coffee table or on the bureau.
And I might be guilty of that one.
I think we all are. Right. But yeah, things of that nature. We want to look at where we're charging them. Is it safe where it is?
But let me interrupt you there. Are there indicators leading up to a problem? So like my phone, seems pretty fine. I don't notice anything different, but are there things I should be paying attention to with my phone, my scooter, whatever it might be?
Sure. The temperature of the device, especially while it's charging, and certainly while it's not charging. I'm sure we've all maybe left the phone or the tablet in the car in the sun in the summer, right? You come back and it says too hot to use, right? So that the phone has an internal, or the device has an internal battery management system that's telling you it's too hot to use.
Okay.
Similar concept when you're charging it. Because we're charging, we're using electricity to power things up, we can expect it to get a little warm, especially given the amount of electricity we're delivering to the device.
Right.
However, too hot to hold or getting hot to the touch.
Then it's a device problem, not necessarily a charging problem, right?
It could be a problem with the device while charging. It really could go either way, but things you want to look out for, certainly if the device is getting hot, if you can hear a sizzling or anything like that with inside, that'd be a failure of the component of the battery. If you ever hear a pop, like a popping sound, that can be kind of a late indication of failure inside of the battery. And we see that a lot with our mobility device issues with the battery packs in them, is we'll hear that popping and then maybe a hiss, and then we're led into having some sort of a fire event from that afterwards.
So if God forbid a fire does happen in somebody's home, some folks, the sink is nearby. You talked about water earlier. You don't want to throw water on it. What if people have a fire extinguisher? What I'm getting from you is battery fires seem a lot different than your normal, hey, I dropped a cigarette, didn't notice it, something caught on fire. You might want to attack that first to try and get it out before making the 911 call. Are batteries the same, like with a fire extinguisher, a pot of water, anything like that?
The pot of water is going to be pretty ineffective, especially the amount of water that one person has in their house, as this water reactive metal is wanting to do its thing as it's damaged. In the home, you're not going to be able to put the amount of water required to smother that out quick enough. The same thing with a fire extinguisher. Your classic homeowner fire extinguisher, your ABC extinguisher, is useful for a lot of things. But we've seen this personally in my community where the fire extinguisher just doesn't stand a chance against the lithium-ion battery. That these are really burning very, very hot. Sometimes the best thing, especially for the homeowner, when you notice this problem, is to isolate it. And certainly if it's inside the home, we can tell you from experience, it's going to get worse fast. We want to get out and get away from it.
Everything I've learned about fire safety is fires spread faster than you can ever imagine. And it sounds like with lithium-ion batteries, that is even more so. It spreads much faster.
It really is. It really is. And depending on the size of the battery pack, or even the single battery, what have you, that's burning or malfunctioning, it goes from bad to worse very quick, at a level that I'm not going to be able to do the math for you right here. But depending on what's around it too, it's going to make everything else around it so much hotter. And it's going to push whatever's in that room to its ignition temperature very quick.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the fumes from a battery fire kind of elevate the fire even more so.
Sure.
Are those fumes hazardous to us as humans? Are you breathing them in? So is that a concern if you have a battery fire?
It is definitely a concern. A lot of the components within some of these batteries, various plastics and the lithium ion itself, right? When lithium ions burn, they give off hydrogen gas, which is extremely flammable. But the plastics and the coatings around these battery packs and the cells themselves can give off some potentially harmful chemicals. It's really not something similar to burning plastics, but at a much quicker rate. We really don't want to be breathing in what's coming out of there.
So once you're able to determine you have a fire in your home, well, you should call 911 immediately anyway.
Of course, on your way out.
Right, exactly, good point. But if you know it's a battery fire, then the urgency is that much greater to get out. Don't try and attempt to put it out yourself. You will only make it worse, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, the odds of you making it better, unless the device can safely be removed from the home at that time that it's starting to have its issue, that's really the best way to handle it. And that's not something, and I want to stress this, very much, that's not something that the average homeowner is going to be prepared for within 1 to 2 seconds of noticing this problem.
Right.
So touching that device and trying to relocate it is just going to it's going to make everything worse for them. And that's not something that we encourage the public to handle
Now,
at all.
we've seen lithium-ion battery fires in all of our local communities, usually, initiated from an e-bike, a scooter, or something like that. And to your point earlier, where do you store these things? So if it's in a hallway and it prevents you from getting out, now you've just put your life in danger. So, but sometimes we're in a living environment where that's the only place to do it, only place to
Sure.
store it. What should we do?
Finding the best possible place to store these things, or especially when we're charging them. We see a lot of problems when these devices are charging or right after they've charged. Typically not with a low charge, although that is possible too. We want to store them in a place that never blocks any way out, period. Right? We want our way out to be the safest and quickest. If they do have to be stored indoors while they're charging or something like that, or to prevent theft, really want to keep an eye on it, like we had talked before about monitoring the temperature.
Right.
If you hear or smell something that could be wrong with it, it's a great indication that something very much is wrong with it.
And get it away from anything.
Get it away
immediately.
from
Call
anything
help.
immediately. Call us. Call the fire department, local emergency services in your area. Also, not storing them next to things that are flammable too, that are just going to make the situation worse if a fire should
Don't
arise.
store your e-bike next to your gas can for your mower.
It's not good practice.
Right,
It's
right.
really not. And these things they can happen outside of the home too. But we really try to encourage when we can to have these people store their devices outside of the home, and especially away from a means in and out.
Very good. We're up on our second commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back to this edition of In Focus from the 22 News Plus studios. Across the desk from me today is Ludlow Fire Captain Zac Ellison. Thank you, Captain, for joining me. We're talking about lithium-ion battery fires and fire safety. We all have them in our home. We all have these types of batteries in our homes. They're everywhere, from cell phones to tablets. But the growing trend is electric bicycles, electric scooters. So we've covered a number of ways to prevent it. Okay, but when we take that to a much bigger scale, all right. So lithium-ion batteries, if I understand correctly, there's so many out there right now. They're never going to get recycled in time. But you have these battery storage facilities that have been proposed that people are against. When it comes to battery storage facilities versus owning an e-bike, which is worse?
Well, I think we really have to take the problem for what it is and look at it in scale, right?
Okay.
These energy storage facilities, they're put up to assist the grid, in the ever changing, in the dynamic demand of us, we using power, right? There's a lot of investment that goes into those things. Now,
It's a business.
it certainly is. And while they do present their own hazards in their own unique way, environmental, firefighting, etc., such as anything else out there really could, with that large investment comes an effort to protect it. So a lot of those
That makes
bigger
sense.
facilities are designed to protect their investment through extinguishing agents, everything else. And
So no person who's doing that as a business wants a fire, because then your business is gone. You're up millions of dollars.
yeah, it
Interesting.
really, a lot of facilities, when we get into the commercial, if you will, the large scale
Right.
battery storage, there's a desire to protect your investment and to protect the power that we all need, versus some of these home devices, or maybe the way that we fix these home devices, the way that we charge them. There's not so
Right.
much of a desire to keep those safe, and that's where we see a lot of the problems. Our at-home devices, our personal devices. There's just not as much of a push, and that can be a cost problem. That can be for a number of different reasons.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think of, our home devices, if you've got I'm just going to use Samsung or Apple device. Okay.
Sure.
You go on the internet and, I can get this charger. It's a super fast charger. It's $4.99. It'll charge my phone from, 10% to 80% in 3 minutes.
Mhm.
But it's not coming from the manufacturer.
Correct.
Is that a problem?
That really can be a problem. A lot of these devices, when they're bought, whether they're bought online or in a store or whatever, they're things to look out for when you're purchasing them. Maybe, for instance, that they've been tested. UL, that their Underwriters Laboratory said that the device and the charging unit have been tested and they are compatible together. And that's something that we really want folks to take note of, is that you can, for whatever reason, the charger doesn't work, it gets misplaced, and we go online and we see, you start typing in, and,
right?
You
Phone
get your
charger for this model.
You get your answer right away, whatever you need. And the problem with that is that the charging unit for the battery or the replacement battery for the device that we're buying may not be compatible with the device that we're using. So it's interesting. While we may want it quicker and more readily available or cheaper is not always our safest option.
It's funny, as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking of all of the stores in our area that are, where you save money. You go to, I don't want to say names, but there are lower end price stores.
Sure.
And the chargers in there, cables, plug outlets, whatever it might be, they're dirt cheap. But you got to read the packaging to make sure it matches your device, right?
You do. You absolutely do. We see that with a lot of things, not just in our personal mobility devices or tablets or phones, but like even, for instance, as we're talking about the fire service, we're talking about smoke detectors, right? You could buy a smoke detector online or something with a sealed battery in it, but it may not have ever been tested. That's why we encourage folks to really look at the package, look at the back, make sure that it has been tested and certified. For example, Underwriters Laboratory, they're physically testing these batteries in the environment that they're supposed to be in to make sure that they're going to perform that way.
And they grade it or authorize it for usage for that purpose, or they don't.
Correct. Right. Or they don't. Not to say that some things, that some chargers you might get, whatever, for your phone won't work. Right? We're not saying that everything won't work, but you do go down kind of a slippery slope when you're trying to buy something aftermarket that wasn't intended for that device, especially when it comes to our mobility devices like e-scooters, e-bikes, things of that nature.
One of the things that I think about a lot is the level to charge. Everybody says don't charge your phone to 100%. Is that, is that true?
So much.
If I charge it to 100%, does that increase my risks of problem?
There's a lot of factors that go into that, but what I can speak to is that how fast you charge it. Not getting a battery to 100% when it comes to battery health could be, argued on a couple different platforms. However, how fast you charge it. Batteries, by and large, don't want to be charged super, super fast.
Okay.
Right? They want to be charged slow. It's kind of like if you've ever done any sort of cooking or anything, maybe on the grill or in the smoke or the crock pot, low and slow.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of how batteries like to be charged. They like to be charged at kind of a slow pace. So while it's more convenient for us to have it charged as fast as possible, it's not necessarily the best thing for the battery.
Interesting. Unfortunately, we need to leave it there. Captain Zac Ellison from the Ludlow Fire Department, thank you so very much for joining me today. Fascinating conversation on lithium-ion batteries. Folks, stay safe out there. You heard all the advice right here. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.